Hello, welcome back. Yes, guys, I am back from my Lent break. To be clear for anyone's new here, I am not Catholic, but some Protestants also partake in Lent. Anyways, yeah, Lent. It was an interesting time trying to find other things to do other than YouTube. And then, of course, I had many video ideas that I wanted to make, which hopefully will be coming up soon, so you get to see all that. As far as the writing project that I talked about in my Lent video, I wrote over 20 pages, which is I wrote over 20 pages, which is farther than I've ever gotten in me trying to write a book. Although I've decided to not continue with that project, there are other things that I might pursue if I find the time to work on them, or make the time to work on them. And I also one day wrote a short story, which was pretty interesting because usually a lot of my story ideas aren't short story like ideas, but yeah, that. So for reading, all I read for Lent was nonfiction and fanfic. Hey, not all fanfic is spicy, okay? If you want to see a video of me talking about the non-spicy fanfic I read, please let me know in the comments. So yeah, I did read one book for my TBR because I kind of had to, but that was a DNF, which we will actually talk about in this video. So yeah. Anyways, on to the topic of this video. So I think I can't remember when I added to my description, but I kind of been wanting to focus my channel on the more obscure books, and I didn't always set out to do that. It was just like a lot of the books that I happened to be interested in were more obscure. So that's what I kind of wanted to focus on. But there was a time earlier in my YouTube career where I read more of the popular books because that's all I heard anyone yap about. Yeah, it was all I heard anyone yap about. And also, when a book in question was split, I wanted to read it for myself and give my take on it. So, and yeah, what we're doing in this video, I'm going to be giving my opinion on the popular books I've read and also some content considerations. Yeah. And so for popular books, I'm talking specifically more about kind of this modern book talk era popular books. I don't know if I'd consider all these book talk books, but they're popular in the modern era. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first book I read that would be considered like popular book in this modern era, I guess would be The Maid by Nita Prose. So this was my first kind of like mystery kind of book. I was never really interested in that genre growing up. The only reason really why I picked this one up was because I'd heard that while it is never said explicitly, the main character appears to be on the spectrum. So I thought that was interesting. Me being on the spectrum, reading a book with the main character that was supposed to be that, and that seems to be the main standout for this book for a lot of people is the main character Molly. So yeah, for me, with that, like, I think I've just come to see that, like, I'm just not really a character-driven reader. I wish I was. I wish I could do all these character analyses that people do, but it seems like that doesn't quite come as naturally to me. So with this one with the character, like, it was kind of just like, okay, like, maybe if I were to read this again, maybe I could appreciate it more. And also with her mainly being on the spectrum, I feel like if I had gone into this book blind and not known that she was supposed to be that, I don't know if I would have figured it out because I think I'm probably as being on the spectrum, I probably would have been like, well, isn't this how everybody thinks? So yeah, but one thing to note about this book is that unlike some of the other books that we're going to be talking about today, there wasn't really any major content warnings or content considerations. I think there is language, but like our main character Molly doesn't swear, but the other characters around her do. But no sexual content from what I can remember. I think there's might be a little bit of a romance, but there's not much of concern in that content area. So yeah. So the next popular book I read, this one is very popular, and that is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. So where do I even start with this one? So yeah, this one, so in another genre that I didn't really normally pick up until this era, my YouTube era was kind of more fantasy. Like I was just never not that interested in that genre growing up. But this one, I think I was one of the more enjoyable fantasy reads in my I need to be drawn in to really like it phase. And I liked the first two parts of this book. They were, I don't know, they were interesting. Then that last part is where it started to lose me, and I was kind of like, okay, like, and I was like, again, in my I need to be drawn into really like it phase. Like I was drawn in throughout the whole book. Like I think I read each part each in one sitting. So there's that. I think what really let me down for this book was the sort of cliffhanger ending. Like, and I get it's the first book in the series, and Stephanie Garber wants us to pick up the next book, but I don't like cliffhanger endings. So yeah, that's it. I, for some reason, didn't include content things in my note. That I didn't. I don't think there was much concern. I don't remember there being much language in terms of sexual content. Like there's a reference to a wedding night, but not really anything explicit, and there's no spice or anything. So, and from what I've heard, it seems like the rest of the series, I haven't read the rest of the series, but it seems like the rest of the series is also no spice. So, there's that, but again, can't speak much to that. So, yeah. There was once a time when I was fascinated by the book talk sad books. So yeah, it's seeing all these content about all these sad books, and so of course I added some to my TBR, and I tried three, which we will be talking about in this video. And the first one I tried was The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. So this book is about a girl who is raped by her older brother's best friend, and this book is kind of about the aftermath of that, how she deals with it, and how it affects her. So to sum it up, so I started reading this book, and I liked the writing. Thought it was pretty cool. It's hard to remember exactly what else I liked about this book. I remember there was one thing I didn't really care for, but even with that, I was like, okay, well, I can see how this adds to the story, even though I don't really care for it. But then there came up a spicy scene. Now, um, with this synopsis, because I didn't know what this book was about before reading it, I was a little worried that the actual attack would be described in detail, but thankfully, at least from what I've read, that was not the case. It was the story starts like right after that, so we're not there when it happens, and it's only talked about briefly. Where the spicy scene comes in is this girl meets this guy at school, and they form a sort of relationship, and they do it. So yeah, so like even that, and even in that case, like I could see how it could potentially add to the story, but I think I still got the point the author was trying to get across by just reading the dialogue after the scene. So there's that. So and then so after reading the dialogue after that scene, I put this book down because I thought this is not helpful to me at the time, but I was thinking I would come back to it, but then I've reconsidered that, and I thought, like, if there's going to be more scenes I have to skip over, then I don't think I should be reading this. So, yeah, that was a bit of a shame, because again, I liked the writing, and I wanted to know what was going to happen next, but, like, I couldn't, so, yeah. The next book to talk about is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This book had me disturbed. So I'd heard going into this book that um this book is closed door, which I don't agree with that. And I also saw somewhere that it was labeled open door, but I don't agree with that either. I think the most accurate term to be to describe this book would be fade to black. So there's that. So again, but I'd heard there was no spice, but there were just some gross comments from things. Ooh, I don't even remember much of the gross comments, but they were just gross situations, like when they're in that changing room and then talk about the guy's thing and like all that stuff. That was like, no, 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 no. So yeah, like that had me disturbed. It was not, I did not like that. Although that was kind of stuff that was kind of all in the first part of the book when the they're on the honeymoon trip. When they got back from it was when I started to like the book more. So, but yeah, it's still, I mean, like, and like even with the fade to black scene, like I still felt like I had to skip over the first scene. So, and I don't care for fade to black anyways. So, don't recommend it. I guess it wasn't that bad, but the next book to talk about is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So, before reading this book, I'd heard negative things about them, like, oh, they quote Shakespeare all the time, and like this and this and this, like all those things. So, but I was still intrigued because there's such a big split over it, although because of the negative things I heard, I remember because I was also doing the thing at the time of like filming my initial thoughts before reading this book, and I remember as I was filming that, I was like second guessing my decision to read this book, but then I still read it, and I liked it. I was stunned I liked this as much as I did, and I guess a lot of the criticisms that I heard before I would simply disagree with. And another thing I'd heard about this book was about the people who like it. They were thinking like, oh, people who like it think that if you didn't like this book, then you just didn't get it. It was too intellectual for you or something. And I heard when I was hearing that, I was kind of like, well, reading is subjective. There's people have different tastes and all those things, and every opinion on any book is valid. But I will say I can understand why people who like this book would think that. Like, because I don't know what it is about this book, but it does kind of feel like an acquired taste. I'm not saying it actually is. I'm just saying it, whatever it is, it feels kind of more well written than it may be, may not be. I don't know, 'cause I personally liked it. Now, of course, that being said, I don't recommend this book because, of course, one thing that's talked about, one of the main elements of this book is this same-sex attraction that the main character has towards one of the other students, which, of course, as a Christian, I don't really agree with that kind of things. Why I was able to enjoy this book, even while disagreeing with that element, there's a few reasons for that. The first one being that I wanted to, at the time, um, I wanted to put into practice the idea of you can disagree with the message but respect the delivery. I still respected the delivery. And in two, because I already knew about it prior to reading this book, and I found that if I know about an element that I would normally dislike about a book before reading it, then when I read it, I like it more than I maybe would have if I hadn't known about it. And the third reason was that it wasn't as focused on as I thought it was going to be. So, yeah, there's that. So now, for content in this book, there is language in this book, of course. It's like, yeah. And then there was also a scene that I felt the need to skip over. I don't know if it'd be considered spice because it was kind of short, but keep that in mind. So, yeah. And then I tried an Emily Henry. And I tried Book Lovers. And from what I read, I did not care for it. I didn't care for anything that was happening. I think the reason why I picked this one specifically up was for the sister element, but when I got to reading it, I did not care for that element at all. So Yeah, and I put it down because I was like, yeah, I'm not enjoying this. I'd rather read other things. So yeah. But of course, all of this was in my I need to be drawn in to really like it phase. So and I think that was the main reason why I didn't care for it, was because I wasn't drawn in. So since getting out of that, I have been curious what my thoughts would be on Emily Henry now, but now I don't care to find out. Well, it's not that I don't care to find out, but it's just I'm not going to let myself find out because while Emily Henry books may not be as spicy as some others, the spice is still there, and it's still not something I want to be reading it. And this one, Book Lovers, is considered by some to be her spiciest. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, I dodged a bullet by putting this book down then, right? Because, like, where I put it down, like, I didn't even get to any spice. So and I was already prepared. Like I already had a place where I could find out which chapters are spicy. So I was prepared to skip those chapters anyways. But yeah, so some of the content I did get through. I think there was some swearing, but I don't remember much of it. And there was also, from what I remember, kind of talk about spicy content, but thankfully not in an explicit way. So there's that, but still don't recommend. Moving on. The second book talk sad book I tried was If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nowlin. So yeah, this was I think I thought I would be more drawn in, and still need to be drawn in. I thought it would be more drawn in because this book has short chapters, but I was not. I think the main reason I put it down was because I didn't like the main elements of the story. I didn't like the concept of like our main girl has a boyfriend, but she's still in love with her childhood best friend. We're supposed to be rooting for the idea of a relationship with the childhood best friend instead, and that just I didn't like that. I didn't like that. It's still like is giving emotional cheating to me. So there was that. So I didn't put this one down because of content, but do not be mistaken, there are definitely content problems. So the first, there was a few, I think 3 scenes that I felt like I had to skip over. Based on what was said, I don't think any of those scenes were sex scenes, but still, that's still not a good sign. And then that one thing that I thought about later that's like, wow, this was in, well, maybe not wild, this was in the book, is that these young girls talking about sex, and thankfully not in a graphic way, but just in the sense of like these young girls really want to lose their virginity, and it's like, man, you are 14 and you do not need to be thinking about this stuff. I know you got hormones and like all those things, but trust me, you don't need to be thinking about that kind of stuff, okay? So, yeah, there is that. Didn't care for that. Don't recommend that. Moving on. We're talking about 2 book talk sad books back to back. So, the third book talk sad book I tried to read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So, it was interesting with that because I tried to read this in a reading blog, and I remember I wasn't even 100% sure of the author in that blog. I was like, wait, is it Taylor Jenkins Reid? So, anyways, not that much about that. This one, I remember even before reading it, feeling weird about this book being on my TBR, but I still tried to read it anyways. So, I started reading it, and at first I was annoyed by the political stuff, like I think one of the like dedication messages, then some of the other things in the book I was like, I don't care for that. I mean, I think the writing was still fine, but that stuff I was kind of like. And then there were kind of sexual descriptions. I don't know how to describe them, but they were like brief enough that like I couldn't skip them. So that was kind of annoying. again, I've talked about this, like, that's almost worse to me than, like, spice, because at least the spice, most of the time you could skip it, but, like, sexual things said, there's no skipping that, so yeah, there was that, and I was already thinking about putting it down, but I think what put me down, uh, sorry, that's a weird way to say it. What made me put it down was like the kind of LGBT content, but I think I'm not sure how many people are familiar with this book. And why I put it down because while reading it, I felt like I was being convinced that like LGBT stuff was okay, which yeah, that was kind of a strange thing, so I put it down. So yeah, not much more to say on that. All right, the next to talk about is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. So it was interesting that it was an Alice Feeney that got me into thrillers, but then also another Alice Feeney that made me question if this genre is for me, which is what this one was. So the first thing that I was kind of not sure about is that this one was spookier than I was expecting. I mean, of course, giving the synopsis, like, don't ask me what I was expecting, but that wasn't into that. And then, of course, the main thing people talk about this book, like the twists. I just thought that like some of the twists toward the end were unnecessary. Like I'm not, because I can't say which some of those twists were. Yeah, not much more else to say that. So for content, I think there might have been some language, but like I remember when a video trying to flip through my other Alice Feeney book to see if there was language there, and I didn't find language there, so maybe there wasn't any here. I don't know. And then this book, it focuses on a married couple, but there's not really sexual content. There was one scene that I kind of wondered if I had to skip, but there wasn't really anything there. So yeah, I think this one is I guess fine, but I didn't care for it. So yeah. This next book to talk about, I didn't think was that popular, but looking on Goodreads, this book has more ratings than another book I've already talked about, so I guess we got to talk about it here. And that is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Fredrik Backman. My first Fredrik Backman. So, from reading this book, I think this was a very well done story. Yeah, I thought this book was very good. The thing that that was most concerned that like held me back from enjoying it, and I didn't even give it a rating on Goodreads, was that there is language in this book, mainly like the S word and like stuff like that. So, but from what I remember, no other serious content considerations. So there's that. It's like hard because I did think this was good, but also I'm not sure if I want to recommend it because of the language piece. It just I don't know what to do sometimes. So yeah. Not looking forward to talking about these last two books. So first we have I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. I think Jennette McCurdy is coming up again because she came out with a new book this year called Half His Age. No thanks. Doesn't sound like something I'd want to read. But I did read this book because I was interested in her story, and I suspected there would be some content giving like the nature of the subject matter of like abuse and stuff. And I was thinking if there was going to be sexual content, that it would be about like sexual abuse, but that's not what I got. So for this book, like the first half was interesting, like reading about this young Mormon girl growing up with this mom who's pushing her into acting and like all her experiences acting and all that stuff. But then the second half, there was all of a sudden language like F bombs and like all these things. And then I think four scenes that I felt like I had to skip over, which maybe they weren't that detailed, but still I can't risk it. And I guess with her new book, I guess she's writing novels now, which I guess she'll do whatever. But this is how she's gonna get with writing her own biography. I don't think I'm gonna be interested in anything else she writes. So yeah. In the last book to talk about today is a more popular Fredrik Backman book, and that is Beartown. So, how do I even sum up this book? It's about this small town that, like, they think they're gonna get out of a rut by winning a hockey game, but then one of the hockey players does something, and it's like, eh. So, first of all, this book, the story is incredibly slow moving. Like, we're going through, like, it probably takes like 10 chapters to describe one day. That, of course, is mainly because there's so many characters we're following. So I'd heard there was many POVs in this story, but I was expecting more of like a wonder thing of like each section based on a character, but there's no headings for each character, and there's like many POVs in one chapter, so that was not what I was expecting, and that was not what I liked. But then there came up some like sexual slash like inappropriate comments that are just like, ugh, no, I don't want to read this. So I considered putting it down. I was like, oh, well, keep going. Then there'd be another comment. Then, okay, well, let's just get to the main, where the plot starts, see if I still want to continue for there. And so the main crux of the story happens, and I felt like I had to skip over some parts. And then after that, I was still like, I still don't want, it's still going slow, so I don't want to continue. So I put it down, which was my first DNF in like a year, so just kind of a shame, but hopefully that means I get to the rest of the books I get to read. Hopefully they'll be better, they won't have content problems, so yeah, we'll see about that. So that is all for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to say in the comments what are some popular books you've read and your thoughts on them. If you've read any of these books, do you want to know if you do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you disagree? Whatever. But please be nice about it and all those things. So that is all. Goodbye.